Welcome, Risa.
Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for having me. I see people are still coming in, but a number of you are here already. So while we are waiting for a few more people to slide in, I'm just going to tell you a little bit about myself, since many of you probably don't know me, but hopefully you should be able to see my face. But this is also, this is me. I've been in healthcare marketing for over 18 years now, and almost all of my experience and my firm's work is in the dermatology and cosmetic surgery space. So we are very targeted with just your types of practices. We work with private equity-backed groups, as well as private practices, as well as some pharmaceutical companies. So I have lots of clients going through exactly what you guys are as well right now. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and get started, and everyone else can see the recording. So to start off, you know, one day we're gonna look back and we're gonna say we lived through the coronavirus outbreak of 2020. Seems crazy to say that now, but it is true. So while the media all day is highlighting all the losses, I'd like today to talk mostly about the opportunity that exists and what you actually need to do for your practice now. And although healthcare is one of the exempt sectors nationwide, everything has changed, and I'm sure every single one of you are taking a hit. So it's important that we all innovate our services and our businesses as quickly as possible. And if we do it well, I truly believe that the innovations will become a permanent aspect of your business and might even open up new revenue streams. So that kind of positions this talk. And lastly, a quote that I love: start by doing what's necessary, then do what's possible. Suddenly, you're doing the impossible. So today we're going to focus on kind of what you need to do first, what's necessary right now. And in the second webinar, we're going to be talking more about opening up new revenue streams and innovations for your practice. And in the last one, we will be talking about tying it all together for not only now, but when we go back to whatever our new normal is, how to incorporate and do it all for the long run for the growth of your practice. Which is this information right here. So if you want to take a screenshot or write down these dates, this is what's going to be up and coming for the marketing webinar series. All right, so first I'm going to take you through kind of at a glance the high level that we're all living right now. Then we're going to talk about developing a crisis communication plan. We're going to talk about how to possibly reconsider all of your advertising spend and what to do with it, how to update your online presence, how to pause or modify any patient automated communications, and how to set up a remote working environment for all of your staff. And lastly, to carefully watch your cash flow and what kind of considerations you should be making for your employees and HR. So to get started at a glance. So, you know, in an instant, which seems like, you know, forever ago now, it was just a couple weeks ago, the market completely shifted. We still are unsure what the duration is in every state and every city. The mandates are currently a little bit different, but it seems that this is not going to end this week for anyone. So we do, you know, we do have this to deal with for at least a couple more weeks, maybe months, and hopefully not longer. This is uncharted territory. This is uncharted territory for you, for myself, for everyone. So I'm going to share a lot of kind of the best practices and the things that I've learned so far so that we can all continue to learn from one another. Of course, everything is changing daily. I feel like the changes slowed down a little bit from where we were a few weeks ago, but it's still changing very quickly, so we need to be extremely nimble. And what we do know for sure is that online search is down about 25 to 50% across the board for dermatology and aesthetic practices. So this means a lot less people are searching, and likely your website traffic is down about the same amount, just because people are very busy dealing with other things right now that might be more of a top priority. And of course, they're not looking possibly to go in for a non-essential or elective procedure. So your practice. Also, as we said, if you have any questions, you can pop them into the chat box right now, and I can answer live. It's hard because I can't see you guys. So any, feedback or questions as we're going, please pop in. You can send it privately or to everyone. And I would love to modify this according to, what you guys are actually need and what you're looking for right now. So please start populating those in. So back to this, your practice. So we have definitely shifted to only essential visits for almost everyone across the board. Telemedicine is a brand new world that we're all living in, and I'm going to be speaking out about that more in the second session. A major revenue decline. Pretty much no matter who you are, your revenues are going to be down. Obviously, the reimbursements for telemedicine are pretty sad. And, a lot of the bigger procedures we're not able to complete. So, everyone is experiencing this. But crisis can lead to opportunity. What kind of opportunity? Well, this is the time to be focused on education. This is the time to be focused on leadership. This is the time to be focused on goodwill, how to improve your technology. And possibly this is actually an opportunity to mix up your staffing. We're going to talk about this later, but a lot of you have been forced to put people on reduced hours or furlough. And a lot of times it's a good opportunity to consider making a shift when we do return to normal, of potentially not setting up the exact same staff you had before. So let's talk about developing a crisis communication plan. So this is basically two parts. The first one is for patients. So right now, it's extremely important that no communication that you have going out is salesy at all. You don't want to be promoting specials or trying to get people to pay in advance. Ideally, you're being all educational, supportive, and informative right now. All of your communications, and I'm going to give you some examples. It's a really important time to be high touch. Normally, you might be only emailing your patients once a month, maybe some practices once a week. But right now, this is the time to potentially be doing it even more. Depending on, your platforms, some people are updating daily on social media, on website pop-ups, which I'll show you in a moment. But I think as things change and as your practice changes and what your offerings are, it's important to continue communicating that quickly. And lastly, for patients, this is the time more than ever to be genuine. You're going through the same things that they are. So you don't need to pretend like, you're on a different planet. It's actually okay to be probably more transparent than you've been before. Share people. It's okay if you're a little scared. It's okay if your family is, staying at home and, not even ordering things on Amazon. Whatever is your truth right now, I think it's worth sharing, because there's no right or wrong answer how to deal with this, and everyone's dealing with it a little bit differently, but it will help people be able to relate to you a little bit more if you're just as genuine as possible. So what do you do for employees? Oh gosh, 1 second, where did that just go? Sorry, I got a phone call. Let me just pull this back up. I'm so sorry, technical difficulties. Where is my presentation? I'm so sorry, I do not see where my presentation went. Oh gosh. Okay, hold on 1 second. I will just pull it up again. Okay, very sorry about that. So For employees, this is where we left off. So your communication plan for them. Internally, this is the time to have strong leadership, trust, transparency, and daily communication is all very important for your team internally. Externally, this is the time to script new messaging for your staff to use on the phone or email. How are they going to answer the questions that are coming up right now? When are you going to open again? What should I do for this? Is this considered essential? Is this considered elective? How do I talk to the doctor electronically? These are all questions that no one has been many of your staff have not had to answer in the past. So it's important, I think, to literally give them some frequently asked questions written out. So how are we going to reconsider our advertising spend? So these are many of the platforms where you may or may not be spending advertising dollars. I'm going to go through each one quickly right now. And basically, any sort of promotion that's unrelated to our current reality should definitely be paused across the board. And cash flow is key right now. So I am finding that most everyone is pausing or at least reducing or refining all of their advertising dollars. Oh, oh gosh.
Risa, while you're fixing that, a question came in. What do you think about communicating with staff who you've had to lay off?
That's a good question. It depends if you have laid them off or if you have furloughed them and intend to bring them back. I am not a lawyer, but legally you are not allowed to, communicate with them about work at all. But on a personal level, as long as your lawyer feels like it's okay, I think it's still helpful to potentially be reaching out to people and helping them go through and deal with this crisis and just be like a support system to a friend. If that answers some questions. So, all right, I am not sure where this next slide went, so I'm going to go through each of these right here, right now. So with pay-per-click, I think that is a very easy thing. You can pause it with no penalties. You can just turn it off right away. If you are going to keep it going at all and you're using custom landing pages, you want to make sure that the landing pages have been refined to speak to things like virtual consultations are available, or when we open back up we will be offering this, or whatever that might be. But that's definitely a very easy one to turn on and off with a single click. There's no minimum spend by any means. Yelp also is allowing people to pause their campaigns, and they are an on-demand type service, so you could turn that on or off. If you pause it instead of canceling it, they're offering, I think, $350 back towards your campaign once your new date comes in. So I would recommend pausing it and putting a relaunch date, a month out, a few months out from now, whatever it might be, as opposed to canceling. Also, Yelp has a new feature on their page where you can actually add a COVID-19 update. It was just announced this morning, so that should be available on all your Yelp pages. You should definitely update your office hours on Yelp, and possibly even consider making a graphic with the current status of your office, if you're open, if you're not, if you're offering telemedicine, and making that the primary photo on Yelp. So if people are searching, it's the first thing that they see. Okay, Real Self here. Real Self is very similar to Yelp. They are also normally under a tighter contract than Yelp, but they are allowing people to be flexible with their spotlights, pay-per-click sort of advertising on Real Self right now. So definitely reach out to your rep. Real Self also has a unique feature to allow you to update your profile so that it says you're offering virtual consultations. Let's see, are there any questions? Then we have local. So local means Google My Business or Google Local or GMB. And Google My Business is a little bit interesting right now because they have turned off a lot of their features, like your ability to leave and respond to reviews, as well as opening up any new accounts. So right now, though, you can update your current status and your hours. You also, can keep updated and potentially even add a status update to your Google My Business as well, which is very important. That comes up in Google search first. And then we have New Beauty, which you should also reach out to your rep. You may or may not want to continue the print advertising feature right now. If you can suspend it, if that's of interest to you. And of course, your print advertising. Think about any contracts you have potentially with any community or local papers, and anything that was pre-scheduled to run, and any of those you may want to consider asking the campaign to keep that on pause. I'm going to take a 1-second break and see if I can find the rest of my slides here, because I really want to show you guys the entire presentation. We seem to be missing. Hi. Well, all right. I'm not sure where that went. Anyhow, okay, so that's basically my thoughts about advertising. Does anyone have any questions right now that they want to add in before I continue on, just about your paid advertising?
You can send those either via the chat or the question feature. I have not received any at this point, Risa.
Okay, all right, well, I will keep moving then for now. So next, let's talk about updating your online presence. This is definitely very important right now, and we're all scrambling to do this as quickly as possible. So your online presence is, all of these platforms, your website, your Instagram, your Yelp, your ZocDoc, your online scheduling software, RealSelf, and Google My Business. So I'm going to take you through each one at a time. So first one, your website. So you could create a site-wide banner on your website, similar to this up here on this Pima Dermatology website. This is something that should be shown on every page of the website at the top. And it's ideally your web team should create it in a manner that you can go in and update the text quickly, because obviously the situation is changing and you want to be able to update this information as quickly as possible and for it to be visible on every page of your website, on desktop and on mobile. The call to action buttons, you might also consider changing them. For example, on this website, this top one that says shop now, this previously said, schedule a consultation. So we modified that to say shop now, since that is where we're trying to drive people. And then down here, you also see we added a new call to action button just about teledermatology. So I would look at the main call to action buttons on your website and consider modifying them for your actual current service offerings. Lastly, any online scheduling or ordering options, if those are possible for you, make sure those are easy to find on your website, front and center. So now let's talk a little bit about Instagram and social media. So we want to ensure for sure that your posts are only COVID-19 related, or that the messaging is appropriate for the current climate that we're in. Now, in the second webinar, I'm going to be giving a lot more examples about what that might be. You see a little teaser here on this example. You can go to this Instagram page, which is @cosmetic laser dermatology, to see. I think they're doing a very good job with keeping the tone and the messaging right on. I think it's classy the way it's being done. And you can also see here, we did a couple things. We updated the call to action in the bio. So you see right here, it says virtual consults. Of course, a couple weeks ago that said, schedule a consultation, or, schedule a visit. So we updated that. We also, on this one, added a highlight reel for everything related to COVID-19 that we're sharing in our stories, which I think is another good thing to consider right now. So next we have Yelp. So with Yelp, I mentioned earlier, they have a pop-up available now, a COVID-19 update message from the business that you can be updating quickly. It only came out recently, so that's why it's a picture of a diner page right now from their website. But this is something that is now available for each of you on Yelp as of today. On Yelp, you also want to make sure to update your hours of operation. You want to remove any promotions on the page right now. And as I mentioned above, consider pausing your advertising. Yelp is offering this $350 back in credit if you pause versus cancel. So that's something good to think about. And as I mentioned earlier, you could add the COVID-19 graphic with some information as your primary or first image on your page so that it's very clear and people can find the information quickly. Are you open? Are you closed? Are you open for essential visits? What are your new hours? Are you offering telemedicine? Those are the basics that people are looking for right now. And lastly, you know, of course, add any virtual offerings you have into the bio or description on your Yelp page as well. So now let's talk about Google My Business. So of course, we want to update your hours of operation. We want to remove any promotions. We want to add that COVID-19 graphic with some information as your primary first image. You want to add your virtual offerings to the bio or description. And, you know, you might consider changing some of the information and leaving or responding to online reviews or services that are not available. So if you are, we're going to speak in a minute, but sending out people requesting that they leave you reviews, it may or may not be possible at this time. So make sure you confirm that first. Real Self, again, you can update your hours of operation. You can remove any promotions. Consider pausing or stopping your spotlight advertising, adding that same COVID graphic with the information, and adding your offerings to the bio and description, including that special icon. If you're offering a virtual consultation, it's now a new feature inside of Real Self that you can add to your profile. And ZocDoc. I don't know how many of you use ZocDoc. Who here uses ZocDoc? Wish I could see you raise your hands, but assuming some of you do, probably more for the medical visits, you definitely want to make sure that you're updating your hours of operations. It may or may not be tagged and tied into your practice management software. So likely if you blocked off your schedule in your practice management software, it may also be blocked on ZocDoc. However, if you updated your practice management software to still be open for virtual consultations, you need to check how that is syncing with ZocDoc, because ZocDoc is trying to schedule the in-person consultations versus virtual primarily. With ZocDoc, you might also call your rep and consider pausing or stopping the advertising spend until we resume back to normal. You're adding that COVID-19 graphic and adding some of your virtual offerings to your description inside of ZocDoc. So next, let's talk about online scheduling. So online scheduling, if you didn't already have it in place, this is a great time to do so. I know a lot of you are scrambling to do this right away. I'm going to speak in the second webinar about some resources and best practices to get it going. But for now, if you do have online scheduling, make sure that the reason, which is over here, is changed from, you know, previously before it may have been Botox or cosmetic consultation or, you know, skin check. Whatever it is, I would modify it so it's only, people are only available to book what you're actually offering right now. So make sure your hours of operation are updated, adding those virtual offerings again and how it will work. I also think it's nice to kind of explain how the virtual appointments are going to work. Are you going to be charging? How will they log in? Do they need to download software ahead of time? These are all questions that your patients are going to be asking, and the more that you can put it out there, the less questions your staff will have and the less barriers to entry will be there to actually get people to sign up. So to do that, you could consider making a video of you speaking. You could consider writing some information down and putting some screenshots on there. You also could consider doing a little screen recording on your screen and literally go in and schedule a consult and then log in to do the virtual consult so people can follow along and see it, how it's really happening. And of course, we will speak more in webinar number 2 about offering online scheduling if that is not something you're doing already. But just for right now, this particular screen that I'm showing in the example here is using Next Patient, which is my favorite one that syncs in with Next Tech. So for those of you on Next Tech, Next Patient is the one to go for. So are there any more questions that have come in so far? Dawn?
No, Rita, none have been received. Please remember, you can type your questions in and I will read them as they come in.
Okay, I will keep going. So let's talk about all of your automated communications that are going out for patients right now. Some of you may even not realize how much automation may have been set up by your office staff and or your marketing team. So these are, I want to bring these all to your attention. So we're going to go through and speak about each of these. Hopefully they will each be on their own slide. One at a time, but these are all the different types of automated communications that you may or may not have and may or may not need to consider. So for the first few that are basically all fall into the same camp, we have your appointment reminders, your recalls, review invitations, and your online scheduling communication. So basically after they schedule an appointment, they probably get an automated email back confirming their appointment. So all these automated reminders, like your 12-month skin check if someone is due to come in, or they're due for Botox, we should consider pausing all of those. Ideally, the names and the patients that need them can still be more or less put on hold. So when you're open for regular business again and you restart the automated communications, those patients that would have received them in the last few days, weeks, or months will still get the notification at the right time.
Risa, we did receive a question
Yes.
pertaining to this. Can we keep automated communications going so patients know that they are due and then they can schedule for a later date? If not, should we make a list of the sorts to schedule for a later date?
Good question. So that's why it's pause or modify. So you can keep them open, but if you were going to keep it open, you would want to modify it to basically say you're due, you know, once the COVID situation or once is resolved or once we are back open, please call and schedule. However, I feel as if people are being inundated with a lot of information right now, and so they might forget and you might need to resend it. So it may be, in fact, easier to more or less put it on pause if you can.
Also, do you know of a HIPAA compliant texting program that we could use if we don't have an EMR?
Yes, there are a number of them out there. One of the ones that I have a lot of clients using is called Clara with a K, K-L-A-R-A. I have no financial interest in any of these companies, so that is one really nice two-way HIPAA compliant messaging communication. And I think, did you say that they don't have an EMR software?
Correct.
Okay, so if you don't, you still have a practice management software, I imagine. So I would also reach out to that company and ask if there are any two-way communication platforms that can sync in with their software or somehow be integrated. If so, for example, your patient database could be there. So when they send a message, it connects them to the record in your practice management software, which will make your life a lot easier. So if you are keeping the communications going, you definitely want to highlight the telemedicine or your current office status. Perhaps for some of the appointment reminders, if it's for something that's essential, perhaps they still can come in. So you need to take that on a case-by-case basis. And definitely make sure that you review any kind of automated emails that are sent after a new visit is made. I imagine most all of you have something set up. So once a new appointment is made, they get an appointment confirmation email and possibly a 1 day prior, 3 day prior reminders. You want to go in and review each of those to ensure that the messaging has been updated to match the current offering. For example, we don't need to give driving directions if it's going to be a telemedicine visit. We don't need to, remind them of our address. Instead, we should pop in the link and the instructions for how to log on virtually. So I definitely make sure you look at each of those. The next area is our kind of pre-scheduled emails and any pre-scheduled social media. This also is something that a lot of people might not think about or really be aware of what is being pre-scheduled out there by your social media company and by your marketing company. But a lot of messaging can be set far in advance. For example, a pre-scheduled social media post for something like Happy Doctors Day, which we had National Doctors Day, which we had earlier this week, for April Fool's Day, whatever it might be. If your team set up any sort of pre-scheduled, you want to review them and ensure that they're still appropriate to go out at this time and they don't need to be altered. So pre-scheduled emails, I would definitely pause those. Actually, I had one instance myself where we had a pre-scheduled email to go out reminding people of the current promotions, which was terrible timing, of course. So we had to send out a retraction email immediately. So please learn from my experience and make sure that you have all of those paused or reviewed. Any more questions? Okay. So let's talk about also your voicemail and your answering service. These are also important people to bring into kind of your communication loop of what's happening. So your voicemail perhaps should be re-recorded to talk about what your current office status is and what your offerings are available for people that want to get in touch with you. And your answering service, if you have someone live answering, they also need to be notified and for how to answer basic questions so that they can relay them to you correctly and that they're not giving out any kind of information that's not actually accurate at this time.
Risa, a quick question. Can these emails or posts only be COVID related, or can we offer some lighthearted material to view?
Good question. So that is something that I was going to go through in detail in the next webinar, but for now, let me just show you this slide again. For this page, I encourage you to go visit this platform because they are not all COVID-19 related, but they are all appropriate for the current climate. Some of these are, I know it's small probably on your screen, but some of them are quotes from the direct physicians giving, just some of their well wishes or sharing their personal experience that they're going through. Happy National Doctors Day was of course appropriate. The video at the top is announcing a webinar, an educational webinar that we're doing. So that isn't actually related to COVID, only that we wouldn't have been doing it virtually in our prior world. But so to answer the question, I don't think they need to be 100% COVID related. I just think you need to make sure that it doesn't seem insensitive or out of left field, like you're not in touch with what's going on. One of my clients in New York City last night took a short little video outside of her balcony of, the people singing out the windows. I think that was lovely. But then today she did one reminding people, if you're at home, how do you do an at-home skin check? Of course, it's still important to see your dermatologist, but let's review the ABCDs of skin cancer, and they can all, look at their own bodies and, review some of the guidelines themselves. Also keeping, informed about how to stay healthy and happy at home, sharing what, exercise or, things you're doing with your team, how you guys are working remotely, sharing a screenshot of showing some of your Zoom office meetings now can be fun. So I hope that answers a little bit of your questions. So let me go back to where I was. Okay, so next we're going to talk about setting up a remote working environment. I imagine most of you have already had to do this, although I know not everyone is on lockdown already, like certain cities. I'm personally in Los Angeles, so we've been on lockdown for a while, but it is not nationwide yet. So to set up a remote working environment, you might consider rerouting your phone systems. Sometimes people have a voice over IP phone. You could ask your IT person if it's VoIP, voice over IP. If so, many times those phones from carriers like Ring Central, for example, you can unplug from your office, bring home, plug them into the internet, and they will work just as if they did in the office. So that's a great, really easy solution. If not, you can consider having calls transferred or forwarded so that they can be answered remotely by your team. Your mail, your office mail, you might want to consider going to the post office and doing a temporary address forwarding to go to your home, so you don't have to continue to go to your office and pick up most likely our bills and other kinds of communications like that. But that's something to consider that's easy to do at the post office. You want to make sure that your staff is still following HIPAA guidelines when they're logging into your EMR and practice management softwares from home. Are they using a company issued laptop? If they are, it's definitely more secure, but it still depends on their wireless internet at home. For example, are they using their own internet? Are they going and using a public Wi-Fi? That's a big difference. Are they using their personal laptops to log in from home? These are all considerations that you need to discuss with your IT team and your legal team to make sure that we're still following HIPAA guidelines. We don't exactly know, what's going to happen and if they're going to modify any. So for now, I recommend being as conservative as you can be. And as we already mentioned, updating your answering service with your current status and instructions is important. Here are some online messaging services that are great for your team and potentially for patients. So I don't know who here has ever heard of Slack before, but Slack, you can go to slack.com, is a really great, two-way messaging service for your employees, so for your internal team. And you can set up different channels and do direct messages, but you want to make it easy for people to communicate all day in the office because they can't just turn around and speak with someone anymore right now. So I personally love Slack. It's a big part of my business, and I highly recommend it. Clara is also an online messaging service that I mentioned earlier. This one's HIPAA compliant, so you could use it also to speak with patients. It has a telemedicine feature to it, and you can also use it to speak internally and even to communicate via text with people like the pharmacy, which can be really nice for patients right now. So I would definitely look into setting up some of these online messaging services. And I also would look into creating some sort of digital asset management system. Some people call it DAM for short, D-A-M. You don't need to set up a very fancy system. It could be as simple as just a shared Dropbox, where you could put in some of the new information that people might need to access quickly, like the cheat sheet for how a patient will log on for a telemedicine appointment, like the frequently asked questions for the front desk, like your new policy for your own employees or for patients. So basically all those materials that you're probably emailing out to your staff, ideally you can store them in one location so everyone can continue to access them. I also recommend potentially using things like Google Docs, Google Slides, Google Sheets, which are similar to Word, Excel, and PowerPoint. Those are shared documents that can be great to keep you and your team connected in a virtual environment, to ensure that they're HIPAA compliant. If you're going to be discussing patient information on them, you need to make sure that you have a business associates agreement signed with Google, which is easy to do. You just need to know to tell your team to make sure that you are set up with G Suite, they call it, which is the professional, not the personal usage for Gmail, and that they have signed the business associates agreement with Google. And after you do that, everything that you place on Google Documents, Google Sheets, or Google Slides will all be part of that HIPAA compliant platform. Okay, any more questions yet before we move on?
No questions received at this time.
Okay. Sorry, I'm not able to see them on my end for some reason. So next, let's talk about cash flow. So while I am not a financial advisor, and I encourage you to speak with your bankers and financial advisors and accountants, I do have some high-level tips and tricks to share with you. So I would make sure that you've suspended any scheduled service vendors. I know a lot of you have things like housekeeping or parking passes, shredding services, or linens to wash your scrubs every night. So make sure you reach out to all of them and put something on hold. You don't need to incur any extra expenses that are unnecessary right now. I'm sure a lot of you have seen a lot of the information going around about requesting either a discount or a postponement for your rent or your mortgage payment. For those of you in private practice, you know, this is definitely something important to consider. After your staffing costs, your facility cost is probably the next highest on your list. So it's definitely something to look into. Many people are offering to let you go for 1 month, 2 months, or 3 months without paying, and instead they will tack that on to the end of your rental agreement, for example, or your mortgage. So I think for a lot of people that could be extremely beneficial right now. Of course, there are also the different loans that are coming out, and supposedly we are going to get some money back paying for some of these services if you've signed up for them. But I still think it can't hurt to ask, just to make sure you've covered all your bases. So speaking of some of these different loans that are out there, the two big ones are the SBA loan and the CARES Act that are now out. You can register and apply. There are 3 different ones that you should be applying for, because the small business loan also has a supplement to it for basically dealing with a crisis situation. At the end of this, I'm going to put my email here, and if anyone would like, I'd be happy to forward any of the kind of informational sheets and applications to you if that would help. I think that you and or your finance team and financial advisor or CFO should really start looking at different projection models for your cash flow. I would do one for best case scenario. I would do one for worst case. I mean, what is best case? Best case, at least in California right now, seems to be that we might open May 1st. Worst case, I don't know, through the end of the year if something terrible continues to happen. But no matter what it is, you know, right now your revenue has changed considerably. So you definitely need to update all of your cash flow projection models and make sure that you are still going to be able to be, you know, at the very least a break even and not in the red. And this is where you'll play with how many employees you can keep on and who you decide to furlough versus reduced hours. And you need this fluid model to make sure that you're doing things appropriately. I would also reach out to your large vendors like Allergan and Galderma and MERS and request extended terms for any accounts payables. A lot of them are doing this automatically, but many of them are available to do it automatically, but only if you ask. So please ask. I think, you know, 90-day terms, you might already have set up for them. Maybe they can go even longer. If you have 30-day terms set up, I'm sure they can go to 90. Whatever it might be, it's definitely going to help with your cash flow right now. If any of you have a business line of credit, I imagine most all of us do, this is a good time to consider potentially an increase on your line of credit. Oh, it says line of request. I'm sorry, that's supposed to say line of credit. So whether or not you've finished your 2019 taxes, if so, you can turn those in. If not, they might be able to use your prior year and maybe just your year-end balance sheets and P&L. But whatever it might be, I would speak with your banker about that. I also would request an interest deferment for your line of credit. I know I personally have my line of credit at Chase Bank. It's a business line of credit, and all I had to do was ask them what services they had available, and they said, we have interest deferment for 3 months, which will be tacked on to the end. Would you like to sign up? And I said yes, and they said done. It was so easy, but if I had never asked, it would not have happened. So I definitely recommend asking. It only takes one phone call or email. This is also a very important time to focus on your aging accounts receivable report. Look at who's out there for your payers from the different insurance companies, for your different patients. And although it seems like an odd time to be asking for money, you do need to make sure that you can stay afloat. So I think it's appropriate, especially for the insurance companies, to start getting your billing teams, for example, that might have more time on their hands right now because you have a lot less patients being seen. So hopefully they can have time to go back through some of the old aging payers and really try and get you that last dollar to the end. A lot of billing companies will end up writing off kind of the last 5% or whatever percent they've agreed upon with you. So right now is probably not the time to write that off, and instead that's probably the time to buckle down and try and go after that last dollar as much as you can from your team. And I think this is the last one. I would go through and look at all your inventory, specifically of your injectables, your skincare, and any other products you sell. Look at the expiration dates. If any of them are coming up in the next couple months, I would work with that company to get some replacement products, because what we don't want is for us to get back into business in May or June, whenever it is, have a big grand opening, open up shop, start getting the patients coming in to get all this product, and then all of a sudden we open up and we see that it all expired. So I would go ahead and look at that now. Most all of the companies are offering to replace expired product with no charge and very easy. Again, you just need to ask. Oh, one last one. Many of you might also have things being delivered automatically for your office, like coffee for the kitchen, or cups, or sugar, or toilet paper, or tissues, whatever it might be. And kind of all of those things that might be on auto delivery, you also want to consider pausing right now to help with your cash flow.
Risa, quick interjection, although it was on your last section. Do you have a recommended app to pre-schedule social media posts? Somebody mentioned they were using Hootsuite, but it doesn't work with Instagram anymore.
Yeah, so truthfully, there are a couple different ones. Hootsuite's probably the most well-known and used to pre-schedule social media posts. And I think that for sometimes they can be worthwhile, but for right now, I would avoid using them. And also in general, my company, we do a lot of social media, and personally, we don't use any scheduling softwares, because when you make a post on, for example, Instagram, you also want to create a story out of that post at the same time. So if you're scheduling it, you can't schedule stories. So you're going to have to schedule the post and then go back in. And if you're going to have to log in anyways, you might as well do it at the same time. Plus, things are changing so quickly, and you don't want to pre-schedule something even for 2 days from now, when who knows if tomorrow there's going to be some new national mandate that we're all going to need to learn about, and it might change what you're going to say. So I think now more than ever, it's a little scary to schedule things. I will, but as far as the software, I can email you a couple of different links that we've used, but Hootsuite would be the most popular one. I also think that whenever anyone starts going into pre-schedule posts, it's a risk to lose touch with some of your engagement. I like my team to log in, make a post, make a story, and then while they're there, make sure they're looking at all the comments, all the direct messages. You need to be logging in multiple times a day anyhow to be responding and engaging with your followers and comments. So I personally really don't see the need to pre-schedule anything at all right now. I hope that answered your question.
I think it did.
Oh, sorry. Is there another one?
Can you just like a post, or do you need to respond via commenting?
So, liking the post is the bare bones of what you should do, but I highly recommend commenting and actually giving a written response on every single one, something back, whether it be thanks or just an emoji of a heart or a, blushing face, or, great feedback, or we look forward to seeing you soon, or, anything else we can do to help, let us know. I do recommend responding back. It also helps with the algorithms on social media so that your posts they see more engagement happening back and forth between you. It might open up a little dialogue, and then therefore your posts might show higher for many other people on their feed. So any other questions, please keep them coming. But if not, this last one for cash flow is you can consider incentivizing patients to kind of pre or advance pay for a future procedure. But if you're going to do this, you need to be very careful with your messaging. You don't want to seem like you're trying to be greedy. You don't want to seem like your business is, going to die without revenue coming in. But I have done it for a couple clients, and I do think there is a tasteful way to do it if it's done appropriately. And some patients might be well interested in that, especially if there's some sort of discount for them to prepay now. You would definitely just want to be sure to consider the expiration date of when they can use that value in the treatment, since we're still kind of unsure what the timeline is for this whole COVID-19 crisis. Right now, for most of my clients, we're saying, it's good through the end of 2020, just to kind of play it safe. But I have seen other people even saying, it's good into 2021. But you do want to put some sort of expiration date absolutely on every type of promotion you ever run, and especially with, a prepayment like that. So I hope that's helpful. All right. If no one has any other questions about the cash flow, I'm going to move on to some of our employee and HR considerations. And then I believe this is the last slide, and then we will wrap. And I'd love to answer as many questions as you have. I am here. So for your employee considerations, so this is definitely the time to determine your required staffing levels. This is something that should be done during your cash financial projection scenarios that you're going to run for yourself. And what is the bare minimum that you can keep now to survive? What's the what you would like it to be, and what's the highest that you could actually keep while still being able to stay afloat and keep your business up and running? It also might be worthwhile to consider the SBA and the different CARES Act loans, because many of them are actually going to financially incentivize you and possibly even cover a lot of the costs if you keep your employees versus furloughing them or reducing their hours. So that's definitely something worth considering. The new form that just came out this week, they supposedly are going to cover up to 2.5 times your employee payroll, your rent or mortgage, and your utilities. So that could be a substantial amount of money for some people, and it might help allow you to keep your employees on staff. So then, if you're going to get rid of employees, are you going to do layoffs? Are you going to do furlough? Or are you going to do reduced hours? This is a tricky situation because with the unemployment rules right now and the unemployment compensation that people could get, if you're doing reduced hours, you definitely need to run some scenarios, because for some people, it might actually be more financially beneficial for them to go on unemployment. For you to cut their hours completely versus reduce them down, because if it comes to a certain point, it might be almost a break even for them, or they might lose money depending on how much you've reduced their hours. I think this is different on a state-to-state basis, so I would definitely speak with your attorneys about this. And with furloughing, you also need to run some projections on what that means for your benefits that you're offering, which is another cash flow consideration for you. And with reduced hours, also the number. Many times people in their handbooks, if it's under 30 hours a week, they're no longer eligible for benefits. Is that what you'd like? Is that going to be okay for that employee? These are all things to think about when you're considering furloughs or reduced hours. I also think it's very important for your staff right now to relook at their job descriptions. I don't care who they are, pretty much all of them, their job descriptions have changed, and at least temporarily. So I would, on the next slide, I'm going to show you some actual things that I think people can do from home, but I think it's important to not just verbally say them, but to maybe even give them something in writing. Here are some of the new responsibilities I'd like you to work on, because a lot of these people are not used to working from home, and we don't really want to just leave it up to them to kind of figure out how they can add value. This is assuming they, of course, have not been furloughed and they're still getting paid. So I'll show you some examples in a moment. And then I think with your employees, I think daily, at the minimum, weekly communications are extremely important. I think many different types of communications. It could be over one of those messaging softwares like Slack, like I mentioned. I've had some people record a video of themselves and email it out to their employees. I have a lot of people doing daily Zoom meetings and check-ins. Something my team is doing that I think is a little fun is every day at a set time in the afternoon, we all join a Zoom meeting, and for about 15 minutes, we do some stretching and yoga together just to kind of all see each other's faces and come together. So I think, I mentioned at the beginning, but I think that your leadership right now and how you are handling your employees is very important. It's vital to be genuine and as transparent as possible, and just to keep sharing. It will make them be a lot less scared and nervous when the world around them is, for some, they might say it's crumbling. It's for sure changing. Lots of their friends and family are getting furloughed or laid off or reduced hours. So the more that you can keep in communication, the better. It will make, I think if you do it correctly and if you rise to the occasion at this time and be that leader that they need, it will actually pay back for the long run. You are going to cement yourself as, a true leader in their eyes, and this is definitely the time to shine in that respect. And to piggyback off of these, I think that since you're going to be giving them all some modified roles and responsibilities to do, I would also set up goals for them. What's the daily goal? What's the weekly goal? Maybe for the individual and for the office. So you can still help hold people accountable, still give yourselves an ability to celebrate the wins of what they are and really help people stay on track, because it is a confusing, new world, and they may not have, your nurses may not have signed up to be, working from home virtually. That's not what they're used to. So I think it's very important to establish some written goals for people. And then you also need to consider what kind of home internet or technology support are you going to offer? Are you going to pay for their internet? Are you going to provide laptops or cell phones? Right now, again, this is all uncharted territory. So there are not, defined rules about how people are doing this. I've seen a lot of people handle it differently. Of course, probably all your employees have internet at home already. But, like I mentioned before, depending on what you're asking them to do, is it high speed enough to handle video conferencing? Is it being shared with everyone else in their house and they have a bunch of kids that are streaming videos all day and watching YouTube? Whatever it is, I think it's something to just consider for your employees. I know that one of my clients is going to start offering an $80 amount for each employee to cover their home phone and internet. It's capped at $80. They submit their receipts or the invoices and will get reimbursed on payroll. So that's how one person I know is handling it. I know many others that have not even addressed this yet, because this is kind of all just we're still settling into this new remote working environment. But I do think it's something worth thinking about and considering, and I'm sure that your employees are thinking about it as well. So here's an example of some new roles and responsibilities for your team. Of course, answering the incoming calls. We mentioned whether they're being forwarded somewhere or whether those voice over IP phones can just be brought home. Responding to incoming email inquiries and follow-up emails. You've probably had, of course, a set number of people on your team doing this, but are new people going to be doing this that haven't before? Outbound calls. I think there's a couple of really great opportunities right now to reach out for your patients. For example, I might recommend that each one of your employees, of course, that are still being paid right now, are given a number of how many patients each day they should proactively reach out to. They should call or email. First and foremost, how about the leads, the people that we were really close to booking, the people that had open quotes on the table to consider? I think reaching out to those people, not to try and close them, but to check in with them, see how they're doing, let them know we haven't forgotten about them, and we look forward to speaking more about the quote and the services that we recommended as we get closer to opening, just so they don't forget about you, because we don't want our lead pipeline to come to a complete halt and when you restart to have to start over again. I also think it'd be great if you could run a report on every patient who's ever purchased skincare products or any retail products from you. That's a great outbound calling list, and for every single one, you should outbound call them and offer. I'm sure many of you are able to maybe ship from your office. A lot of the vendors out there are offering, e-commerce platforms. This is something we're going to go into in a lot more depth in the next webinar next Thursday. But there's also platforms. You could create your own e-commerce website to sell skincare, and there's also third-party platforms like Regimen Pro or Regimen MD that can get you set up as quickly as one day with an e-commerce customized, personalized store, and when the product is ordered, it's shipped direct from the manufacturer, so even less touch points. If you are going to be shipping skincare to your patients out of your own inventory at your office, I would make sure to let them know that you're doing it with the highest level of precaution. For example, use gloves while you're packing the box up, and maybe even consider putting a little handwritten note in there for them using gloves, of course. Another great activity that many of your staff members may be able to help with is to go on and answer questions on Real Self. I'm not sure how many of you are highly active on Real Self or paying for spotlights, but to promote your practitioner or your cosmetic services, it can be great to become more active on there and answer questions. There are, I don't even know how many, tens and tens of thousands of questions, so it could keep you guys busy for a while. And I put a little line there because you should give a specific goal. Lisa, I would like you to answer 5 questions on Real Self each day. Now, whether or not you want them to send the responses to you to approve, I recommend at least at first having them run them by you. But ultimately, you could get a lot of good content onto Real Self at this time and hopefully be able to use it to drive more leads in the future. Similarly, I think you could also have your team start reviewing your website content. So many of us have website content that was maybe written years ago. And, while it might be true that the techniques with Botox haven't changed that much, there are some new things, some new findings, some new products and brand names. I even saw someone's website the other day that still had Perlane written on it. So, I think that there's, it still could be worthwhile to ask maybe your web team for a sitemap or a list of all of your pages, all your URLs, and then break it up. So if you get a sitemap of 100 pages and you have 10 employees, I would give each person 10 URLs and literally give it to them and say, this is your web pages. I'd like you to review it. Let me know about any errors that are on it, any edits you have, and ideas to improve and keep it up to date with the current protocols that you're doing in your office and the current offerings and the brand names for products. Our V-Beam Perfecta or V-Beam Prima or just V-Beam. And if you go through your website, a lot of us don't have time for this. Well, now we do. So it's a great time to go through your website. Here's a couple more. I think depending on who you're asking and if you feel like they'd be comfortable, it could be great to create one new piece of video content that you could share on social media. If you're comfortable enough, people could also go live. They could be doing things like, what's the difference between Botox and Juvederm, or a neuromodulator and a filler? That actually is still a very commonly searched question in Google, believe it or not. Which, laser do you prefer if I don't want any downtime? If I have no family history of skin cancer, how often do I really need a skin check? Whatever it is, you could come up with a list of questions on your own, and you could have someone go on and record little answers. If it's appropriate for the current climate that we're in, you could post it now. Otherwise, you could just stockpile this content so that you have it to use throughout the remainder of the year and years to even, next year, potentially, as long as it doesn't go out of date. Driving patients to leave reviews is always a high priority because review sites are extremely important. Your Google rankings, your Yelp, and Real Self. As I mentioned, Google right now seems to not be accepting any new reviews, but Yelp and Real Self definitely is. And if anything you could do to drive happy patients to leave reviews or drive any of your patients to share their experiences will definitely benefit you in the long run for your online marketing. And depending on how well you think some of them are able to write, I would actually ask them to help you write some blog posts. A consistent new flow of content on your website is very helpful for SEO and lead generation and your online presence. So whether you publish them all now or you keep them and do one a week for the next through the end of the year, as much content as you can create to go on your website will definitely add a lot of value and benefit to your practice in the long run. And last one is a big one. I think every single one of you probably have pre and post treatment handouts, many of which you've probably been using for a long time. I can't see you guys right now, but I imagine some of you might even be chuckling, especially when I say that I bet a lot of them are even photocopies of photocopies of photocopies. This is definitely a good time to look at those. I think all of them could probably be updated in some fashion, whether the information or the protocols, whether just kind of making them look nicer and more streamlined with your branding, whether it be, making sure that you actually have them for every single treatment. They're definitely great to have, especially to reduce the amount of post-procedure questions that you and your staff might receive, as well as pre-procedure questions as well. So I definitely recommend updating those. And I guess this is actually last. I think I assume everyone on this webinar is probably the physician or the practice manager. And I think this is a really good time to really sit back and think about your why, your mission and your values. Do you have them in place? If not, maybe this is a good time to develop them. If you do, revisit them. Are they still accurate? Do they still represent you and who you are? Developing this has always been important, but as Simon Sinek taught us, it is even more important than ever. And in this time of in this age, I think in our new world that we're living in, it is even more important. So I really encourage all of you to kind of figure out your why. Why are you doing what you're doing as a practice, as a practitioner, as a brand, as an office? I think it might seem like it's obvious that a lot of doctors are just doing it to help people, but I think it needs to go deeper than that and really be more than that, and to just dig a lot deeper. And your staff members, they are not a lot of them don't directly work with a patient. So are they still helping? What's their why? Why are they doing this? What keeps them engaged? So I think these are all really good things to consider. And I'd be happy to share some resources and tools to maybe help guide you through that process if that's of interest to you.
Risa, I've got a couple of questions for you.
Okay.
In order to get forgiveness of the CARES loan, you have to continue to employ the number of employees that you've had before. So we can't really cut now, can we?
Well, I think some people are still still cutting. I think I've seen a little bit of different things happening. A lot of people cut a couple of weeks ago before the CARES Act came out. But I am not an attorney, so I don't want to give a official answer to that question. I think it depends a little bit on the type of business you have, the size, and kind of your financial considerations and how many people you're employing as a whole. Because you might not need to keep 100% of your people to still apply, is it my understanding.
Somebody mentioned that we need to be cognizant that selling non-essential products online is putting those who deliver at risk as well. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I do. I think a lot of non-essential products right now are being slowed down by some of the delivery, even Amazon. I think that if they're selling skincare and if it gets shipped direct from the manufacturer, that's less touch points. But of course, there is still a mailman or a FedEx or UPS that still does need to deliver them, and that is understandable. I have a couple clients that are actually doing kind of drive up purchases. So you can order your skincare on the phone, you drive up, you call us, you run down and kind of wearing a mask, you know, and the gloves, of course, to hold it, hand it off to them in their car. So that would eliminate the delivery person. I think it's a hard place because, you know, of course it'd be better if we didn't have to do that at all, but your patients, they still need to wash their face. They still need to put on moisturizer at night. And so if they're not going to order from you, they are likely going to order elsewhere. Or at least, I mean, you could recommend things that they could pick up at the store, but that going to the store, there's still interaction happening. So we're in a hard place right now, and I don't know if there's a perfect answer to that question. And I think no matter what we do, there will be some people that will think it's not right. So I think we just need to try and do the best that we can and make the safest decisions to help support our patients. But I know personally, you know, I'm already very overdue for Botox, so I'm already, you know, not happy when I look in the mirror about that. So if I couldn't use my serums and creams at night, I think that would just, you know, drill it in even harder and make it more frustrating for me. So it's personally still making me feel good that I can use skincare. And I think a lot of your patients would say that as well. So I think there's a lot to weigh.
I want to say thank you, Risa, very much. If you have any last minute questions, I know we are over time for the end of the webinar, but please feel free to type those in and I will be sure to read those to Risa so she can answer them. Thank you.
I just have one more quote here. I just wanted to show up for everyone. Chaos and disruption can lead to innovation. Not only does it help to focus on the positives instead of only the negatives, but it will also likely improve your business for the long run. So I think try and keep that in mind. Again, I mentioned before part 2 and part 3. And then here is the slide with my personal email. So anyone's welcome to email me. I'm happy to try and help and, you know, share links or assets that I've seen that I think are great that you might be able to utilize for your practice.
Amy Taub gives you a shout out. Great job. So with that, I want to say thank you, Risa, and thank you to everyone for attending today's webinar, Marketing Tactical Information You Need Right Now. If you have any other questions, please contact ASDS education staff at education@asds.net. Once you leave today's webinar, you will receive a survey on the presentation, and we'd appreciate it if you could complete that and provide your feedback. You will also receive a follow-up email within 24 to 48 hours with a CME certificate for those who attended live and a link to viewing a recording of today's webinar. On behalf of ASDS and our presenters, thank you for joining us today and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Talk to everyone soon.
Hopefully I'll see you all next Thursday where we'll go into more tactical information for how to innovate and drive new revenue streams.